Hi, everyone. My name's Rachel, and I am here to talk to you today about intuitive eating. I run my own wellness business coaching called Embodied Wellness Guide, where I help humans increase self awareness, attunement, and respect through inquisitive dialogue and therapeutic movement. So, before I dive into intuitive eating, I just want to share a little bit more about me and my background. So, like I said, my name's Rachel Crambiel. I have a master's in health and kinesiology. And this degree really set me up to get board certified as a health and wellness coach, as well as a health and education specialist. So, along with these certifications during my master's degree, I also trained as an intuitive eating counselor. So, this allowed me to run intuitive eating support groups. And I now use the philosophy and the self care paradigm of intuitive eating to help shape how I work with clients in my own private practice. So, where we're going today is I want to give you a brief overview of the 10 principles of intuitive eating, as well as guide you through a mindful eating experience. So, intuitive eating is really a framework, it's a compassionate self care paradigm around our health behaviors, especially those related to food. So these 10 principles they're really guidelines to help someone understand the philosophy of intuitive eating and adopt the mindset that is intuitive eating. When we get to the mindful eating experience, know that I'll guide you through that. It'll feel a little bit like a meditation. It will be a mindfulness practice. I'll help you connect with your senses. And when we do get to that point, you will need something to eat. Doesn't have to be like a big meal or anything, just something that you can maybe take a bite of, and we'll be in that experience together, taking a bite of food. Okay, so the first principle of intuitive eating is reject the diet mentality. Now, this one's important because it essentially helps people break up with the facade of dieting that's intended to make them lose weight or control their body size in some way. So the truth is that we all have a set point for our own weight, and we have this 5 to 10 pound range that our body really likes to stay at. So our body has this ideal size, this ideal weight that it wants to be at, and our homeostasis works really hard and effectively to keep us within that range. Society, on the other hand, has a different expectation around what our bodies should look like and how we should present ourselves. So this cultural pressure to change our size and lose weight has led to a multi-billion dollar industry that lies to people, saying that controlling their eating and sticking to a diet or strict meal plan will allow them to change their genetic blueprint. Nearly all attempts to lose weight through dieting are unsuccessful. So, if you look at the research, about 85% of those who lose weight on a diet will gain it back within 1 to 3 years. And of those 85% of people, 65% of them will gain back even more weight within 5 years. So, not only are diets ineffective, they are also psychologically harmful. Being on a diet has been linked to things like lower self esteem and poor overall self care practices. So, intuitive eating is really encouraging people to examine this pressure that society has put on them to be on a diet, to lose weight, and to let that go, to reject it, to be in control of their own health and well being, and to not outsource those decisions on someone else's meal plan or diet, but it's really intuitive. They encourage health decisions to come from intrinsic motivations and sensations instead of extrinsic and external ones. Okay, the next principle is honor your hunger. So, this principle is all about keeping your body adequately fed with carbohydrates, fat, and protein. So, in general, most people need to eat about every 2 to 6 waking hours to have energy throughout the day. So, intuitive eating, we introduce what's called a hunger fullness scale. So, it's a scale of 1 to 10. One is like you're absolutely starving, you would do anything to eat, like you are just painfully hungry. And 10 is really uncomfortably full. So this is like, oh, I have to sit down and take a load off. I'm not really functional or able to do anything. Like I'm super, super full. And 5 in the middle of that is more neutral. So you're not hungry or you're full. In intuitive eating, you are encouraged to notice when you are getting to like a 4 or a 3. They call this like polite hunger. And we want to eat in this range when we're not like starving, but just like comfortably hungry so that we can eat consciously and with moderation instead of getting to that 2, 3 when primal hunger kicks in and we're like really hangry. We eat everything in sight. We maybe don't make as conscious of food decisions or eat as slowly. So, this principle is all about honoring your hunger, not skipping meals, and not getting too hungry, and like really noticing what your hunger signals are and attuning to them. The next principle is making peace with food. So, this is all about giving yourself unconditional permission to eat, no matter what the food is. So, sometimes as health conscious individuals, there are certain, like, quote unquote, bad foods that are off limits to us. And they might even be foods that we genuinely enjoy, like donuts, for example. So, if we have told ourselves a certain food is off limits, it can lead to a state of deprivation. So, this state of deprivation can often build into uncontrollable cravings or binging, and we eventually give in to the forbidden food, and it has all this emotional backlash. So, we don't just get to enjoy the food, like we might feel guilty or shame around it. So, this creates this perpetuating cycle of deprivation, overeating, and guilt. And this principle is all about breaking that cycle, recognizing what foods like you are keeping off limits that you actually enjoy, or even ones that you're keeping off limits that if you let yourself eat, you're like, "Oh, I don't even like that much. I shouldn't be so obsessed with it or mentally thinking about it as much." So for me personally, this one was all about candy. So I'm a pretty health conscious person. Like I consider health to be one of my values. And for a really long time, I really turned my nose up at anyone that ate candy. I just couldn't believe that they would do it. It just seemed like one of the worst things that you could do for your health. Um, but in reality, like there is some candy that I really like. And because I was never allowing myself to have it when it was available or when I did allow it to have it, I would eat more than what would satisfy me. Like I would eat to the point where like I didn't feel very good. I felt kind of gross and yucky from the amount. So for me, this principle has been all about like keeping candy accessible to me and eating it when I want in moderation. So that means like, oh, I get to have a piece of candy if that sounds good to me, if I'm craving one. And I really savor and enjoy that piece of candy instead of being fearful that I'll never get to eat it again. So I better eat as much of it as I can and take advantage of this one moment of lapsed judgment. So making peace with food, nothing's off limits. All foods are created equal. This next principle is about discovering the satisfaction factor. I love this principle because it is all about helping someone be present through the before, during, and after active eating. So when I work with clients through this principle, I'm essentially trying to help them enjoy the act of eating and discover what is satisfying for them individually. Eating is a daily experience. So, the pleasure that comes from a satisfying meal or snack is one of the most basic gifts of existence that we all deserve to participate in. So, this principle is all about discovering what it is you really want to eat, choosing to eat in an environment that is inviting to you, and feeling content from the eating experience, like feeling satisfied after you're done. So, a lot of times in this day and age, we are disconnected from our food, and the act of eating is often done through multitasking. So, we might be eating at the same time as studying or reading, and it really deprives us from the pleasure of eating and being in the sensation of eating. So, when someone's working through this principle, I really encourage them to let eating be enjoyable, to set up an environment that helps them be in the moment, whether that's putting on calming music for them or eating on dishes and cutlery that fits their style and that they enjoy using, and letting eating be intentional and lean into the satisfaction of eating, letting it be pleasurable, letting yourself notice what it is you like, what food it is that leaves you satisfied at the end of the day. Okay, this next principle is about feeling your fullness. So, as important as it is to honor your hunger, it's just as important to feel your fullness. So, if you think about that hunger fullness scale, so 1 to 10, 10 is like super uncomfortably full. When you eat past like a 7 or 8 on that scale, like it's truly uncomfortable. It makes us say things like, oh, I'm never going to eat again, which isn't true. When I work with clients on this principle, I encourage them to listen to the body signals that you are no longer hungry. And this is individual, but like for most people, food actually starts to taste different, like both the taste and the texture when we are not as hungry. So like try it. Like the next time you're eating a meal, like notice how good it tastes when you're hungry. And then as you get full, like it really won't taste as good. Like you'll start to kind of dull out the pleasure of that food. Often we've been trained to eat because of external cues, like, oh, the food's in front of us, or my plate is not empty yet, so I'm going to keep eating. And so we're eating because there are bites left on our plate instead of our own internal fullness cues. And it takes practice. Like it takes breaking that cycle of just eating because it's there, to observe the signs that you are comfortably full. Often we have to train ourselves to pause partway through a meal and check in with ourselves. So noticing like, oh, how does this food taste? Like, where am I at on the hunger fullness scale here? And giving our body time to process that we might actually be full even when there's still food in front of us. Okay, this next principle is called challenge the food police. So, this principle is about challenging the inner and outer dialogue that's telling us we are quote unquote good for eating in a certain way and bad for eating in another way. So the food police is a metaphor that represents the voices that are monitoring our behavior instead of letting us know what we actually feel. So it's not intuition, it's more of an external voice. So this might include negative self talk, hopeless phrases, and even guilt provoking statements. So things that we might be saying to ourselves that create emotional whiplash from eating. The food police can also be external voices. So it could be like well meaning but poorly executed comments from friends or family that are judging us, that are making us feel like we are more or less worthy based on how we're eating or even the appearance of our body. So, in this phase, when we're working through challenging the food police, we stand up to inner dialogue and outer comments from others that are harmful and not helpful for you around your journey of trusting yourself, your own intuition, and having a more peaceful and honest relationship with food. Because really, that's the core of intuitive eating. We're trying to increase our intuition and we're trying to have a more peaceful and honest relationship with the experience of eating, with something that we have to manage on a daily basis. Okay, the next principle is cope with your emotions with kindness. So we all have emotions that need soothing, that need managing. So things like anxiety, loneliness, boredom, and anger are all emotions that we have experienced that like require us to soothe or manage in some way. For many people, food is their coping mechanism. And like it makes sense because like food is pleasurable, right? Like food can give us happy chemicals in our brain when we're eating. Like our body biologically wants to be fed. So if food has been your coping mechanism, like I encourage clients to thank it. Like it's like, oh, like food helped you survive. It helped you emotionally cope up to this point. And then moving forward now with this awareness that food has been my coping mechanism, I can choose to diversify my options. So that when something gets uncomfortable, like when I have emotions coming in, like anxiety, loneliness, boredom, anger, I have a menu of choices that I can turn to help myself cope. And I don't just have to turn to food. Like there's nothing wrong with turning to food. But often it's a short-term solution that like numbs and distract us, but might leave us feeling worse afterwards, especially if we're trying to live with more intention and conscientiousness around our eating habits. So this principle is all about finding other ways to comfort ourselves, nurture, distract, and even resolve our emotions, and having more creativity options, different choices on the menu besides just food when it is emotions we need to manage or cope with. Okay, this next principle is about movement. So they rebranded movement or exercise, to movement, because they found that, like, a lot of times dieting or a poor relationship with food went hand in hand with someone like exercising in a militant way. So unenjoyable exercise often goes hand in hand with dieting. So people are trying to earn their quote unquote calories, or um, they're exercising to look a certain way. So it's kind of going into that diet paradigm. So in this principle, people are encouraged to get moving in ways that are fun and enjoyable to them. So this is another way to tap into intuition, where you get to really notice, like, oh, what kind of movement, like, am I craving? Am I needing? Like, what would meet my needs right now versus what checks a box for my movement experience. So shifting the focus to how movement feels versus what it's doing for me can often lead to more sustainable long-term habits, as well as having more joy and play in our life. There's a researcher based in Michigan, Michelle Seeker, and she has uncovered that long-term exercisers, or those with a consistent movement habit, all share the commonality that they exercise or they move because of how it makes them feel versus how it will make them look. Those who are exercising for the effects on their body, as far as like how it will make them look, it's shown that they're less likely to have a long-term exercise habit. Things like mood and energy from exercise are benefits that we can experience immediately. Changing health metrics, so things like body composition or even like glucose and cholesterol, all of that takes longer and it's not immediately rewarding. So helping someone's focus shift from like numbers they can't really feel, or that aren't being impacted immediately, to something that they can feel immediately, like joy or increased energy, that's something that will help motivate them to move on a regular basis. This next principle, respect your body. So, this principle is all about accepting your genetic blueprint. It's accepting that set point that like your body, your homeostasis wants to be at, and it's making peace with this set point. It's accepting the body you're in. Because in the same way that we wouldn't expect to exist in a different shoe size, like if I'm a size 8, I can't expect myself to fit in a size 7 very comfortably. It's equally futile for me to accept that, or me to try to change my body size. So just accepting whatever your body size is and making peace with that and respecting that. The truth is that all bodies deserve dignity and respect. And making peace with yours is an important step to accepting the phenomenal human that you are. So, if you're familiar with Health at Every Size, which is another movement that's really complementary to intuitive eating, it's all about celebrating a variety of body sizes and not making assumptions about someone's health based on their body composition or what they look like. Because really, you can be healthy in any size of body, and we should be encouraging people to pursue health, not to pursue a certain body type. Okay, this last principle, and I think there's a reason that this is last, because sometimes obsession around nutrition gets in the way of someone being able to tap into intuition. They're looking for those external rules, those external checkbox, that meal plan, instead of really noticing how food makes them feel, what kind of food is satisfying to them, and what food they're craving, like what their needs are. So, this principle is honor your health with gentle nutrition. And this is about incorporating gentle nutrition principles so you can make food choices that honor your taste buds and preferences and make you feel your best. So, this isn't about eating perfectly, but rather finding habits and patterns over time that lead to nutritional support that support your health and well being. So, some people don't have even basic understanding of nutrition. Like, I've coached some people who don't understand what a carbohydrate, a fat, and a protein is. And even just simple education around nutrition helped them make food choices that were actually more satisfying for them. Because they're like, oh, like food pairing, like I should eat a fat or a protein with my carbohydrate to help it digest, for example. So, some nutrition information and knowledge can be really empowering for people to eat intuitively. Um, but this is the last principle because it's good to not get um, too obsessed with the nitty gritty of nutrition. Because the truth is, you will not suddenly get a nutrient deficiency from one day or even 1 week of poor nutrition. It's your habits, it's your patterns of how you eat over time that impact your health. So it's good to let things go, to not get too obsessed about one day or 1 week that we didn't eat perfectly, so that we can have a well balanced attitude towards our food. So, this principle allows for nutrition science to gently be incorporated into food choices while still allowing you to be ultimately steered by your own intuition. Okay, we made it through the principles. Now we get to have a little experience. So, I will invite you to pause the video now if you need to go grab a food. Okay, you've got your food. Before you eat it, we are going to spend some time noticing our food. So I'm going to invite you to look at what it is that you have. Notice colors, textures. Next, I'll invite you to smell what it is that you have. Noticing any aromas that come from your food. Next, I'm going to encourage you to touch and experience through your fingertips, through your skin, what this food is like. As you touch, you might notice, oh, it makes a little noise. Like me running my fingers through it has a sound to it. Now, before you take a bite, just know that I'll encourage you when you do take the bite in to really savor the flavor and to notice the sounds that come from chewing. So, a lot of times we chew and we just swallow right away. And so when you are ready to take a bite, maybe I lick first. Maybe I just get like a taste from my tongue taste buds. And then when I'm ready to, I'll take a bite and I am going to let the food sit in my mouth. I'll chew very slowly. I'll intentionally savor and notice the flavors of my food. Mm. Lovely. So, we probably don't all have the time to eat every bite this way, but having little practices like this, especially at the beginning of the meal or midway through the meal when we're trying to assess like how hungry I am, it can really help us be with our food and tune into our own internal body signals, our own intuition when it comes to our relationship with food. And that can make a huge difference in how we are choosing to eat, the amount that we're choosing to eat, what we're choosing to eat. And it can be a powerful tool to help us adopt intuitive eating and have more peace with food and have more trust in ourselves and our ability to eat what we need and to be satisfied with our food. So that's all for now. I hope you enjoyed this. It was really nice to share the principles and to guide you through just a little mini mindful eating um, experience. And we'll talk to you later.